I guess there's no real point to today's video other than I just want to talk about the Way of Kings. So let's do it. There will be spoilers for the Way of Kings, so if you care about that sort of thing, now you know. Alright. So we have our hero Kaladin Stormblessed, and we first see him through the eyes of another character. And, it's pretty short-lived, much like that other character. I feel like the first chapter we see him in is a great microcosm for his journey through this novel, right? He's protecting people, he's, smart, quick thinking, a great fighter, and he's out there protecting new recruits. We see this new recruit, and he has no idea what he's doing. He's totally lost, scared, confused on the battlefield. And so Kaladin's team takes him under their wing, and he's like, I want that one. And you get the sense that he really likes to protect the inexperienced. And we later learn, because he failed to protect his brother. I think in some way he sees this inexperienced soldier as his brother, and he's out there and he's fighting, and he seems incredible. But he doesn't save the soldier. Much like we find out later in his tragic anime backstory that he couldn't save his brother. You get a taste of that. He's trying to protect people right away. As soon as we see his character, he's trying to protect people, and he's failing. You see it. And then throughout the story, throughout his journey, this reoccurring theme over and over again where he's trying to protect people and he just fails. So you can understand why he's discouraged. So we jump forward after that, initial scene. So we jump forward, and he's now a slave, and we're all sitting back wondering, like, what happened? It seemed like he commanded so much respect. He was an incredible fighter. What happened? And he's just down in the dumps, and I remember, like, oh man, I really hope we get the answers to what happened here. It's a great way, when you jump like that, it's a great way to make the readers, us, ask questions, like, what happened? How did he go from that to this? So even though he seems battered and broken and like he's totally given up, he still cares about other people. He still, we get these flashbacks of him growing up and his father being a doctor, and we jump forward and one of the other slaves is sick. And so he is like, hey, this guy's sick, we should do something. And then the people he's with just kill the guy. It's just like, man, that gives you a great picture as to what kind of world they're in. He is struggling to survive in a vicious and unforgiving world. And I feel like having something like that early on really, it really shows you what's at stake here. Then he arrives at Bridge 4, where he encounters what seems like the most hopeless group of guys you can have. They all know their meat shields. They have one job: to carry the bridges, onto the shattered plains so the soldiers can cross the little platforms that they fight on. And he's just as hopeless as the rest of them. He totally belongs right there with them. Everybody's given up. And he goes to the edge of the chasm and he's going to jump. Early on, you don't know all of the reasons why and how much guilt he's carrying and things like that. But you get the sense that obviously a bunch of terrible things have happened from him to be this well-respected soldier to where he is now. So Syl kind of reminds him, Syl, the magical honor spren that's following him around, she basically tells him, like, hey, these men need you. And he's like, I let everybody down. And if you've ever let anybody down, it's relatable. So Syl tells him, these men need you. They need your help. And he's like, I let everybody down all the time. But ultimately, he doesn't give up. He decides to give it one last try and go and inspire everyone to be better. And that's absolutely what he does. Just through hard work, dedication, never giving up, never backing down, no days off. But that's what he does. He goes out there and he doesn't give up. And this book, The Way of Kings, is the perfect book to read when you're going through hard times or struggles or just are frustrated with the grind of life, the grind of everyday life, I think in a story like this, It's great because, sure, our problems aren't as bad as Kaladin's, right? We're not literally being kept as slaves and being used as a meat shield to run these bridges. Or nothing ridiculous like that is happening to you. Probably. I don't know your life, but I'm going to assume nothing that bad. But everybody goes through something. Whatever it is you're going through, I feel like in a story, we kind of need things to be exaggerated, to be a little over the top so we can really feel their impact. And in the Way of Kings, he's going through so much, you know. You feel his struggle. You feel for the character. You feel for him. But he goes back, and I love how he inspires everybody. He doesn't tell them, "Hey, we have to do this. We have to turn this around. We need to make a team. We need to, group up and do all this." And I made a sketch. And when I say sketch, I mean like a little comedic sketch. There's a lot of those on this channel. If you're coming across this channel the first time watching this, I do a lot of sketch comedy videos. I do a lot of sketch comedy videos anytime I'm inspired by the stories I'm reading or watching. And anyways, I did this one where Kaladin never gives up. And he's like, "That's it. I'll put together a team. I'll put together the best team. I don't care. Like, I'm unstoppable." And he doesn't really act like that, but what he does do is just start working his ass off. What he does is just start working his ass off, just through hard work, just pushing through even when they're exhausted. Everybody's tired. He's getting in extra workouts. And everybody's looking at him like, "This man's crazy. What is he doing? We're all doomed. What are you preparing for?" And he still just does it. Doesn't give up. Now, at some point we do find out he's using Stormlight. From the coins he has in his pocket that are charged with Stormlight, he's using that to give himself extra energy and motivation and whatever. And because it is a fantasy story, we need the main character to kind of have some extra abilities, I guess, to be somebody unique. We're following the most important character. We're following the most important people in the event that's going on right now. And it makes him kind of cool. and honestly, I like the magic system in this. It's just pretty cool. I like how he can just pull from the Stormlight. Now, he doesn't know it for 99% of the book, pretty much. He doesn't know he's pulling this Stormlight out and using it to heal himself and to be stronger, faster, whatever. Now, it shows wherever he goes, he's a leader and eventually will inspire other people. Doesn't matter how bad his situation is, how terrible. And there's a lot of great fantasy heroes, in all the books and stories and things like that. But it's always cool to see. But I love seeing a character actually inspire people everywhere they go. Like, that's Kaladin's impact. No matter how broken, no matter how much grief he's dealing with, he still can inspire. He still can rise above it. And it's inspiring. It's an inspiring thing to read. So then he does inspire people, and he does get God, what is his name? Lopin? Not Lopin. Lopin's hilarious. Eventually he gets Rock to cook. He starts inspiring just a couple, saves some people during one run. And little by little, piece by piece, he's inspiring all these other Bridge 4 members. Although some of them do die, generally he's saving all of these men who had no hope. And so eventually, he earns their trust, and he starts training them. We have to get better. We have to figure out a way to eventually escape. I like how, although he had the medical knowledge, and we saw through all the flashbacks, like his dad kind of prepping him like to be a doctor, and he wants him to go to med school, and Kaladin just wanted to be a soldier and fight, which I think is a really cool backstory. Like, it adds another dimension to, he's killing people, but he also is trained to save lives. And what's more important? What should he be doing? Should he be saving lives or taking lives? Now, if he's taking lives in order to stop these bad people from, taking over or conquering a nation or defending or protecting other people, then it seems like, okay, that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, it's still taking lives. And so it adds, I like how it adds inner turmoil there. He has to really fight with that probably throughout most of the story. I know in this book, he's very much of sometimes the bad guys just need to die. And that's something, as a reader, I'm a big fan of grimdark fantasy, and characters have a little edge to them. And I'm assuming somewhere throughout these books, he'll change his opinion and be like, no, that wasn't the right way. But at least for now, I'm like, yeah, get them. Some of these guys they need to go. So yeah, he has all this medical knowledge, and then he has Rock and Scar go and collect every night. They're collecting these plants that they can trade for like medical supplies, and no matter how dire the circumstances are, he's planning, he's strategizing, executing, he's figuring out something. He's always trying to find a way to overcome his situation. Anytime there's a problem, and there's lots, just like real life, the problems just don't stop coming, but he's great at just finding a way to get through it over and around and blah, blah, blah. But he's great at just finding a way to get through it. And then he eventually has a plan so that they don't die, but then it screws up the military tactics and ends up getting a lot more people killed. So he saved Bridge 4, but they lost the battle. So that's not going to work. And that's when he gets storm blessed. He's tied to a roof in the middle of a high storm, and it should have killed him. But again, he uses the storm light. That was of the coins, or of the pieces of glowing rock in his pocket. He uses that to survive, and he gets his name Kaladin Stormblessed, which is a really cool nickname. I'm a big fan of any time in fantasy stories, if we can add some nicknames and throw some there. Like, it just makes characters cooler. Like the Red Viper of Dorne, That's a random Game of Thrones reference, but that was such a cool nickname, But then, at that point, people are just like, he's the chosen one. And he's like, no, I'm not. You guys need to relax. But he survived a high storm. They have no explanation for it. They don't know. They don't know there's magic at play here, And it seems like, for whatever reason, he's a Surge Binder. I don't know why. Is he a descendant of the Knights Radiant? I don't know. Is our new Knights Radiant being chosen? We'll get into Dalinar's story a little later, but yeah, I'm not sure why he's chosen at this point. I'm only a little bit through Words of Radiance. But he's chosen, and he has these powers. And Sadeas is just the worst. Ugh. Sanderson does a great job of making Sadeas just really annoying, and you just want to see him fail. Whatever he's doing, you want him to not succeed. But that's not who Kaladin has to really go up against. He's dealing with the, I forget his name, but the guy who's overseeing Bridge 4, and Kaladin eventually finds a way to manipulate him. Again, seeing these obstacles and just overcoming. Eventually we get to the final battle of the Way of Kings, and Dalinar and his son are trapped on one of the shattered plains on this island of land, and Kaladin and his men could actually escape. They can get away free. Nobody would notice. By the time they noticed, they'd be so far gone it wouldn't matter. But he can't leave people behind, even though he hates Light Eyes, because of we've seen the flashback of where his Light Eyes superior, his general, captain, whatever, totally betrayed him and killed his men. And so he doesn't trust any Light Eyes. But he's still going to save these people, because that's who Kaladin is. He's a hero. At the end of the day, he just can't stop trying to save people. Oh man, when he says the words, early on you kind of hear it. And before even reading the books, I've heard the, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. I was like, oh, is that like the catchphrase, for that fantasy series? That's fine, whatever. But by the time the end of the book comes around and he says the words, and he's breaking it down, life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. There's all these thoughts between, and at some point he's like, I've fought so hard, and everything has been so hard. And again, if you're going through stuff, like for me, I had just been laid off when I was getting to that part of the book. So it's like, that hit me extra hard. And I was just like, oh yeah. It's like, oh yeah, things have been incredibly hard. And he pushes through. And so he infuses himself with the Stormlight, and he goes out there and he fights everybody. even a shard bearer from the Parshendi, and he fights him and he wins. And it just shocks everyone, blows everyone away. He's got these abilities. I mean, people are shooting arrows at him and they're just flying all around him. Just doesn't affect him. And I love to see the supernatural hero break out in these situations. In the most emotional, intense moment, when all hope is lost, that's when he has his tragic anime backstory where you see what really happened to his brother and how he didn't get there in time to save his life. And so that hits you. And just how far Kaladin has come, that hits you also. Things have been just awful for him, and now he's saving a bunch of people again. He reaches the conclusion of his arc for at least the first book, where he comes to terms with the fact that, yeah, he wants to protect people, and he wants to save everyone, and he's going to try to do that. However, he's not going to be able to save everyone all the time. He has to live with that, but he still has to push forward and try to save who he can. Try to save as many people as he can, because at the end of the day, that's who he is. And, man, it's such an inspiring character, you know? And so Kaladin saves Downar and his oldest son. And to thank him, Downar basically frees him, gives him a promotion, and all his men are like, we could have escaped. But he's like, realistically, what would we even do? So maybe hang out a little longer, maybe we can build a better life for ourselves, and if it doesn't work out, then hey, we'll escape with better supplies and a better plan. But Dalinar's such an interesting character. In Downar, you have this character who was an incredibly deadly soldier, ruthless, who is now trying to do things a better way. But where he's really at home is fighting. And he keeps getting these visions, and the visions eventually we find out, are basically like recorded messages of the past. And he has to use this information to unite the kingdom, and prepare to fight the Voidbringers and whatever else may come. And man, what he's good at is fighting. What he's not good at is politics. And he has to play politics. He has to play the Game of Thrones. And man, watching him kind of struggle through that, where he doesn't know if he's losing his mind. And I think that's a big thing for both Kaladin's story and Dalinar, is mentally, they're struggling just as much as they are physically. For Dalinar, more mentally. He's struggling even more mentally than physically because of all the visions. He really doesn't know if he's just losing his grip on reality, and if he is, he needs to give up power to one of his sons and step down. If he can't tell the difference between reality and dreams and things like that, he can't really be in charge. But you get the impression he also has a really dark past. He can't say or even think of his wife's name. Did he murder her? Again, I've only read Into Words of Radiance. I don't know. I get the impression something really bad has happened. He's done a terrible thing maybe, but I don't know what that is. I'm sure I'll find out soon enough. But for now, I really like the character. He's struggling with some things, but he's trying to do the right thing. He's also failed to protect somebody. He failed to protect his brother during the assassination, which the story starts off, with. That we see at the very beginning of the story. That really sets a bunch of events in motion. And just like Kaladin, he could relate to not being enough to save everyone. But a big difference is that he was drunk and passed out. It's not because he was fighting and just couldn't do it. He was literally just knocked out. Now we get to see Wit during his story. Now I messed up. When I was making one of my videos, I typed in the name Whip. I typed in the name Wit. I wanted to know if that was just his title or if that was his actual name. And then the name Hoid came up, and I was like, I spoiled something for myself. And I don't know enough about the other books. I get the basic idea that Hoid is like a world hopper, and he probably pops up in other stories. And I don't know, I get the impression that there'll be other characters that also pop up and that are world hoppers and can jump between stories. I would love to see how that works, and I can't wait to read the entire Cosmere and know where everybody's coming from. But Wit is just a really cool character. He's funny, he's witty, he has wit. But yeah, Dalinar's journey, I'm glad he eventually figures out that he's getting messages, basically. He's not going crazy. And all the scenes, oh man, I really liked all of the scenes where he had flashbacks. Because as a reader, we're exposed to this story and this world and the lore for the first time. I don't know what the Voidbringers are. You get the impression that this big evil force is coming to wipe out humanity. And it's came before. And it's going to come again. Pause. And so they have to prepare. They had Knight's Radiance before. They don't have that now. Although Kaladin, he's shown some promise, but they had, hundreds or thousands of them maybe. They had an army of Knight's Radiance. They don't have that right now. So if the enemy returns, how screwed are they? Probably very screwed. A high level of screwed, if you will. But I do love those little glimpses of the horrors to come. Doing stuff like that, it reminds me of the very first chapter in the very first A Song of Ice and Fire book, A Game of Thrones, where we see the others, or the White Walkers, for the first time. And then we jump to the other part of the story, which is all politics and ruling kingdoms and stuff, and you're like, wait, there's a supernatural element here. And that same foreshadowing, that same feeling of oh, there's something way bigger happening below the surface here. There's a much bigger story. Sure, there's the immediate threats that are going on. Kaladin has to fight for his freedom. Dalinar has to try to keep the kingdom together. Jasna's trying to steal the Soulcaster. But in the background, there's a much bigger problem coming. And that's exciting. I love that. But so we go through Dalinar's story, and he just keeps trying to figure out these messages. And it's man, if they could have just recorded a message being hey, look, this is going to happen, this, and that, if the person giving Dalinar these messages could have just, I know they're visions of the past, if he could have just sat and while he was by himself and just talk out loud, hey, I'm going to do this because of this, you guys in the future need to know about this, and this. He could have showed him that, and then show all the other visions, and it all makes sense. But the way he gets these visions are so random, and so just what am I supposed to do with this information? He doesn't know. We don't know as the reader. We have to sit there and guess and be okay, what's this about now? And so poor Dalinar, he's trying to solve a puzzle the whole time. And then we get to Jasna's story, and her story is a great contrast to, all the action and suffering in Kaladin's story and all of the, politicking going on in Dalinar's story. Hers is kind of a heist. She has to steal the Soulcaster to replace the broken Soulcaster her family had. That way she can, give it back and hopefully, restore her family's wealth and figure something out, because her family's struggling. And it feels like Jasna doesn't go through as much, but she goes through things in her own way. And I really like early on in her story where she's told no. She shows up and tries to be I was saying Jasna. Shallan. She has to steal Jasna's Soulcaster to replace her broken Soulcaster and restore wealth and whatnot to her family, not to mention these other guys, these mysterious bad guys want the Soulcaster back, or else, bad things are going to happen. So she has a lot at stake. And I really like how when Shallan first arrives and she has to convince Jasna to take her on as an apprentice, Jasna says no, and she goes into town and she uses her intelligence. Her intelligence is her superpower. Her high IQ and not giving up are qualities that really make her easy to like. The fact that she's crafty, despite being very naive to the world, she goes and she finds some books and she figures out things and figures out a way to present herself to Jasna in a way that will get her to accept her. I don't know if that makes sense, but she figures out a way. She gets it done, Jasna accepts her, and then she studies and draws for most of the book. But out of the main 3 point of views, I like how Sanderson will give us little bits of magic and backstory and lore. Like, here's what's really going on. Okay, she's drawing these mysterious monsters in her drawings. They pop up and she doesn't know why. And, Downar obviously has visions of all these crazy things happening and the Voidbringers and evil to come. And Kaladin has shown abilities of the Knight's Radiant. He has the Surge Binding, and Sazeth also, not really one of the main POVs, but he can use Stormlight and fight with it also. It's great. It's a great setup. It's hilarious to me that you get a book like this, it's 1,000 pages long, and it really picks up after the first 500 or 600 pages. But if you tell somebody that, like, hey, I know it's a thick book, but wait like 500 to 600 pages, then it really picks up. It kicks off. But it does. Then you start to get the Sanderlanche, and you have all this setup. It's where the setup meets the payoff. You have just hundreds of pages of building things up and building up these plot lines and setting up, and then the last like 400 is just like climax after climax after climax, and it just works. It works so well. Although we have a ton of POVs, it definitely feels like Kaladin is the main character of this one. Like, the supporting cast is Downar and Shallan and Sazeth, and all the interludes, sure, they pop up, but like, this is Kaladin's story. I don't know if that changes throughout the series, but if we are going to have him be the focus, he has a really interesting story and backstory. And, oh man, I like how Sanderson uses flashbacks constantly throughout the story, like as ways to add action or moments that really define characters, and you could see like, oh, this is why they're like that. At least for Kaladin. Kaladin has all the flashbacks. I don't think Downar or Shallan, I don't think anybody else had flashbacks except Kaladin in this one, but I like Sanderson's use of flashbacks for Kaladin because it shows you how he became the man he is today. There's so many stories, all the little adventures with his little brother and him falling in love and that not working out. It's a good mix with the current storyline. So it's like you can jump back, because I think it would be too dreary if we were just stuck where Kaladin is in Bridge 4. As inspiring as it can be and as he's pushing through it and all that stuff, it would just be pretty miserable without switching up and showing these other sides and these other things that happened. Not that they're necessarily happy stories, like when all the townsfolk were trying to attack his dad, or all the interactions with the lord over his town and all that stuff. But still, it was a nice change of pace. We switched things up. I'd say the greatest strength of The Way of Kings would be the world building. It's a fully realized world, and you only get little bits. I like, because it is the first book in the series, you just get these little pieces of like, here's bigger bits of magic, here's a taste of the magic system, here's a little bit of supernatural beings that they're going to have to fight eventually. You get little bits and pieces. It doesn't just go all out right away and overwhelm you, so I think that's a good move. Personally, I'm really interested to learn more about the World Hoppers. I want to know, does Wit come back? It'd be really cool if he does. And then as far as predictions for the rest of the series, again, like, I'm only a little ways into the Words of Radiance, so I don't know how everything goes. I'm assuming the big bad that shows up at the end of the novel that Wit happens to witness his arrival, I think it's Odium. I'm assuming he tries to bring the Voidbringers into this world, and then Downar has to continue trying to unite them against that. From the bit of Words of Radiance that I have read, it seems like Shallan is going to join the fray with Downar and Kaladin and be in the same area, which will be cool. I have no idea what Kaladin's story is going to be. I'm assuming he's the hero of the story, and he's going to be eventually the one to fight, in big battles and things like that. But for the next book, I have no idea what his role is going to be. Like, okay, so he's Downar's bodyguard. Is that all he's going to do for the next 1,000 pages? I don't know, but it'll be interesting. I'm excited. Everybody says that, like, the Words of Radiance is even better than The Way of Kings, so I can't wait to dig in. Yeah, I don't know, I just kind of felt like rambling on about The Way of Kings today. I don't know if that makes good content or not, but I was just like, let me just get my thoughts out. So, what do you think? What was your favorite moment? Or what part of The Way of Kings impacted you the most? emotionally or otherwise. Let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, later.